Hello and congratulations on getting access to this video course on email marketing automation. We're going to talk about how to set up your email autoresponder using GetResponse. And in addition to that, we'll talk about some more advanced strategies as well. So this is video number one, which is the introduction. And what I want to do is talk about mindset, because having the right mindset is crucial before you actually jump in and begin to build your list and use this system to essentially build a relationship with your prospects. And of course, in addition to that, with the intent of course, getting them to open your emails, getting them to click your emails, and then of course, get them to buy or take whatever action that you are trying to get them to take. Now, as far as mindset goes, you want to think quality over quantity, meaning instead of trying to reach everybody, instead of trying to get 1,000 people onto your list, don't worry about the big list. Be concerned more about attracting the right person. So at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you build a list of people who have the problems, who want the solutions that you're providing. Now let's talk about what you need. Obviously, you're going to need to have a autoresponder account, and we're going to be using GetResponse. So if you want to go to getresponse.com and create an account, you can do that, and we'll be walking you through step by step. You need to have a product or service to sell, or an affiliate product. So either it's going to be your own product, or it's going to be somebody else's product. But either case, you're going to need to have an end goal. You also want to have access to an email autoresponder series. In other words, a bunch of emails that are sequenced from day one, day two, or however you want to set it up to build that relationship, to warm people up, essentially. Now, don't worry if you don't have one right now. You'll actually learn how to create one that converts and gets high open rates and high click-through rates. So here's a quick overview of what's inside this video course so you know exactly what to expect. And that way, when you're able to piece everything together, you're going to be able to implement it at a faster rate. So obviously, this is video number one. Video number two, we're going to talk about what's your end goal. And the reason why this is important is because if you don't have an end goal, you don't know exactly what you're trying to achieve, then you're not going to be able to build the list correctly, right? Video number three, we're going to talk about creating a connection, understanding the demographic of your prospect, who they are, what their typical day looks like. And that way you're going to be able to write an email series that connects with them, that builds that relationship, that makes them feel like, wow, you're talking directly to me, right? Video number four, we're going to talk about the backward email funnel, meaning how to create a high converting email autoresponder series. Video number five is going to be a quick overview of GetResponse, meaning we're going to jump right in. I'm going to show you the dashboard. I'm going to show you around. And that way you get a better idea of what to expect before we actually use GetResponse. Video number six, we're going to talk about creating a list. So we're going to jump straight in. I'm going to show you how to create a list. I'm going to show you how to set up an autoresponder series in video number seven. Video number eight, we're going to show you how to set up your emails inside of GetResponse. How do you set up day one, day two, or based on how you want to set up these series, how do you set those up so that, let's say you have a email autoresponder series of 12 emails. How do you set that up properly so that it is released based on the time that you choose? Video number nine, we'll talk about setting up web forms. And video number 10, we'll talk about list hygiene. Believe it or not, cleaning your list is very important. And if you don't do it frequently, what happens is over time, people's emails get outdated, they delete them, and then you're emailing an email box that is no longer existing. And what that can do for you is that will negatively impact you in the long haul. We'll talk more about that as a bonus, advanced strategy, and how you can essentially make sure that you constantly get a high open rate. So with that said, that's the end of video number 1, and we're going to move on to video number 2. Hello and welcome back. This is video number 2, and we're going to dive right in and talk about what's your end goal. So before we jump in and talk about the technical parts of how to set up your email autoresponder series, it's really important to understand your end goal. Like, how many different ways and different opportunities do you have to profit, right? So unless you really understand at least a little bit of your plan, then jumping in like everybody else to just build a list is not going to be productive at the end of the day, right? So that's why I am going to focus on these few videos on what is your end goal, how do you create a connection, and how to understand your demographics and who you're talking to. That is actually something that most people totally forget about, and they skip that. And when they skip that, you actually end up failing or not profiting as well as you should be at the end of the day. So what I want you to do is I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions, and at the end of this video, I want you to pause it, take your time to jot down the answers to these questions before you actually move on to video number 3. So I want you to ask yourself, are you selling a product or a service? Jot that down. If not, are you selling an affiliate product? Now, if you're selling a product, obviously you could sell an affiliate product in the long run or vice versa. You really just want to get an idea of what your end goal is now, and what your future end goals could look like is fine. And the reason why I ask you to write this down is because if you're selling your own product, you can do a few things like build a relationship. And there's a few more things that you could easily do, like brand yourself, provide more value. And there's a different way of doing it, basically. If you're selling an affiliate product, you could still build a brand, but you're selling somebody else's product. So you need to gear it in a certain way. So in other words, if you're selling a product or service, you need to clearly understand what are the problems that your prospect faces, right? And give them tips and pointers along the way and build a relationship with them, gain their trust so that they're interested in your product or service. Now, if you're selling an affiliate product, on the other hand, then you may not be required to do all of that. Instead, you can provide a little bit of value and build that relationship up front. And then, of course, you can sell somebody else's product. So it's similar, but it's a little bit different slightly. But knowing your end goal is key. So if you're selling your product or service right now at this very moment, then write that down. If you're not, and you're selling an affiliate product right this moment, then jot that down. All right. The third question I want to ask you is, why are you trying to build this list? You might answer, well, of course, I'm trying to make money. I'm trying to build a list. I'm trying to print money. And that's everybody's goal. But I want specifics. I want you to write down, why are you trying to build this list? I want to make more sales for XYZ product. I want to help more people who are facing this particular problem. In fact, jot that down. I want to help more people who are in this very specific niche, in this very specific demographic. I want to help more people like me. Jot that down, because then you can use that later in your email autoresponder series. So beyond the intention of just making money, what is the real reason behind wanting to build a list? Or in other words, you could rephrase it as, what are you trying to achieve? So if you have somebody that you're passionate about helping, envision that person in front of you and think about, why are you trying to help them, right? What are they facing? And this kind of goes into video number 3, and we'll talk more about that. But if you think about, why are you trying to achieve them? What are you trying to achieve in this whole project of creating this list, or this journey of creating this list? What do you want people to feel like? Do you want people to feel like they trust you, that, or you want people to laugh? Do you want people to feel sad, feel happy? What do you want them to feel like as you're building that relationship? Now, you might ask, why would I want somebody to feel sad? Well, if you're trying to gradually build up to that point of trying to sell them, you want to focus on their pain. Not necessarily your goal is to make them sad, but your goal is to find their pain and to show them that you understand their pain. You understand where they're coming from, right? And from that point, how do you heal them? How do you help them? How do you solve their pain? All right. So that's what you want to do, and jot that down. So what I'm trying to get at is there should be a very specific reason why you're building a list. Building a list just because you're told that it's a great way to print money is not the best reason. In fact, money should come last. Helping people should come first. If you can help 1,000 people and those thousands of people are truly helped, or you provide them with a solution, even if they were to pay you $10, every single one of them, that would be about $10,000. Now, that doesn't mean that 1,000 people will sign up on your list and all 1,000 people are going to buy from you. My point is, what is that passion? What is that drive that comes first before the money? Because if you focus on that and you focus on helping people solve their problems, believe it or not, you're actually going to build a more successful business compared to the other guy who is just focused on building a big list for the sake of money. Hopefully that makes sense. So these are all very important questions, and you should pause this video right now and write down the answers to them before you move on to the next video, which is video number 3. Okay, so welcome back. This is video number 3, and we're going to dive straight in, and we're going to talk about creating a connection. So you kind of got a sneak peek preview of a little bit about trying to create a connection in the previous video. But before we write out your email autoresponder and of course jump into the technical setup, you really need to understand people's problems, what they face, and what the solutions are. So what I'm going to do in this particular video is to help you figure that out and help you solidify what that really looks like. Because the reality is that before you can even do that, you need to do a bit of research, kind of demographic research, or in other words, what does somebody look like? What does your prospect look like? And understand what somebody's typical day looks like. Now, you might be wondering, why would I ever want to know that kind of detail? That's actually very crucial, because if you understand what happens in their day-to-day, you will understand their frustrations, you will understand their happiness, you'll understand their problems, and you'll understand how to create a connection with them to go beyond just, okay, you're behind the scenes, you're behind the computer kind of thing. You'll create a connection, even though you're worlds apart or countries apart. You will create a connection that will click. And that's the end goal of this particular video. That should be the end goal of your list. So my question to you is, does your prospect within your niche lean heavily towards male or towards female? Or does it equally move towards both male and female? So in other words, in order for it to lean just towards female, is if, let's say, for example, that niche is 90% female, or even 95% female, or even 75%. But even 75%, you're kind of moving towards that 50% so that it's both male and female. But if it's heavily towards males or heavily towards females, 80% above or 90% or above, then you want to jot that down. The next question is, what is your product or service or affiliate program trying to solve? So let's pick a niche. For example, survival niche. That niche tends to lean more towards males. And if you think about it, why would they be interested in survival? Well, natural disasters like earthquakes, tornadoes, and all of that can happen. The best thing to do is be prepared. So a lot of times, whoever the breadwinner is, male or female, but this just happens to lean towards males more heavily, they think about what could happen in those situations. Is my family prepared? Or am I prepared enough to help my family in these dire situations? So if you have a product in that case, then you could essentially build a lead magnet or an email autoresponder series that touches on those pains, those fears, the ones that keep them up at night, knowing whether or not their family is going to be safe in these natural disasters. It doesn't matter if you're selling a product or service or an affiliate program. The whole goal of every single one of these items is to build a relationship first. Then you can sell your product, then you can sell your service, and then of course, then you can sell your affiliate program. So oftentimes you'll find that the best converting email autoresponder series, they tend to build a relationship first rather than selling first. A lot of times if you sell first, you'll actually scare people off or piss people off, and they'll simply go to your competitor. So if you think about these things and what essentially keeps them up at night, jot that down right now. In fact, pause this video and jot that down so that you have a better understanding of what you could potentially talk about in your email autoresponder series. And while yes, it does seem a little bit basic, and while you may have heard this over and over again, and you might be thinking, yeah, whatever, let's get on with it. Really, trust me, this is actually very, very important. And this is something that we didn't really even think about long ago when we built lists, and we couldn't figure out why the lists weren't converting, is because if you start with the problem, the pain, and move on to the solution, you have a better gauge of where people are at and how you can get them to a certain point. But if you build a list to build a list without any sort of plan, without even understanding their problems and pains and all that, you don't really know where, in what stage they are at. Does that make sense? So believe it or not, this is extremely important. You need to jot these solutions down so that people feel connected to you, or else, of course, they'll leave. So with that said, let's move on to video number 4. Hello and welcome to video number 4. We're going to talk about the backward email funnel. Now it's time to start mapping out your email series. So past this video, we'll actually begin to do the technical setup. So obviously, if you do not have an email series yet, then make sure to watch this video step by step, watch it twice, because we're going to show you how to create a high converting email funnel. Even if you have an email series that is already written up, I highly recommend that you watch this video, because we're going to talk about some more advanced strategies that will help you create an email series that will get higher open rates and higher click-through rates. So if somebody gets your email, they're going to be interested and they're going to click through. So to speed things up, you're going to learn how to set up a backward email funnel based on what you wrote in video number 3. So if you didn't jot things down, then make sure you go back and do that. But of course, if you're a visual learner and you want to watch through everything first, that's fine too. Now, the point of the backward email funnel is to start at the very last email, which typically starts with "buy my stuff" emails. And it'll make more sense when I show a mind map and the process of how to create the funnel. Now, the reason why we want to go backwards is because psychologically, when you move forwards, when you write the first welcome email, the second email, and all of that, it's actually very hard for the brain to think that way. In fact, if you start at the very last end goal, which is "buy my stuff," you'll begin to think of the missing pieces and how you can fill out. Let's say you have email number 12. You'll figure out email 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. very, very easily. And it actually, psychologically, you'll be able to speed it up. You'll be able to create a higher converting email funnel. So to kind of give you a brief idea, the emails before that should build a relationship, should hone in on the pain, because you got to assume that the people that are coming to this list are people that do not know you. But of course, if they know you, then that's even better. So what you're trying to do is do the worst case scenario where people do not know you. Create an email autoresponder series based on that. If you do that, you'll actually get a higher conversion rate. Obviously, there's no guarantee, but statistically from our own test, that's what we found. So in other words, most of your prospects aren't going to know you. They just have an issue or a problem that they want solved. In fact, most of them don't really care about you. They just want a solution to their problems. Now, of course, over time, as you write to them, you give them solutions to their problems, not the complete solution, which is going to be the end goal, the product or service or affiliate product, but little snippets of gold, little snippets of tips here and there. Over time, they will build a relationship with you. To make more sense, what I'm going to do now is break things down via a mind mapping software. So let's go ahead and do that right now. Okay, so now we are at Lucidchart, which is a flowchart system. Now, you don't need to use them. You can use anything that you would like to use. You can even use a piece of paper. The point being is that a lot of people, they tend to start with the welcome email, or they immediately go into buy my stuff. And if you think about it from your own standpoint, if you're interested, but you're not really interested in any specific product, but you are interested in maybe solving your problem. I mean, who likes to go to car dealerships and have somebody hound over you to say buy, 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 right? Most of us, unless we've done our own research before and we're there to buy, we're not ready, right? So that's why I say start at the very end. Start where you want to get people to buy your stuff and then move backwards. So if this is your, let's say, 6th email or even 12th email, doesn't matter. You just want to start at the very end. And then what we want to do is we want to move backwards. So we're going to move from here all the way back over here. So buy my stuff email back over here. Now you might be thinking, well, what exactly does that look like? So let's take, for example, the example that we talked about earlier about the survival product. So let's say, for example, that we are selling survival kits, maybe meal kits. So what is related to meal kits? So if you think about it, when you have an earthquake or you have a tornado and all the power grid has essentially been disabled and you don't have access to, a microwave or anything like that, then how do you survive? So what kind of content could you essentially provide? So if we open up our little nifty notepad here, we could just start brainstorming survival meal kits. Maybe the top 10 ways to create your own survival meals. Now, maybe you want to talk about how to do it, and the whole process is very time consuming, right? So this might appeal to people who have a lot of time on their hands, but for the most part, most of your audience, they're not going to have a lot of time to actually do this. And that's why they're going to buy your survival meal kits, right? So maybe you can talk about top 10 ways to create your own top number 10s and start with the number 10 and then go to 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 kind of thing. So maybe at the last one, you mention that and you say, well, this process is very time consuming. So if you want to skip, if you don't have 40 hours a week or something to create these meal kits, and you don't want to create it, and so if you want to skip that process, And you can start listing why are your meal kits better than everybody else, right? So in that case, you could say, well, they're better because they're freeze dried and they will last longer. So if you were to create it like a DIY, if you were to create it yourself, then maybe it would last like 1 month. But if you come with us, then ours will last like 12 months. So if you're out in the wilderness and you got 12 months, then these foods will last you about 12 months. I would start hitting on pain points, fears, power grid out. So not having power for more than a week. And that's happened. We've seen that in a lot of natural disasters where there's no power and there's literally no food in the grocery stores. And there's like chaos and everything like that. So the point is, how can you take these items here and then insert them into your top 10 ways? So when they sign up for top 10 ways to create your own survival meals, or even top 10 ways to survive in earthquake, then you start naming the top 10. So number 10, it can be, something. Number 9 can be something. And number 1, or you could do like top 5 ways, and then email them 5 emails. And by the 5th email, you've provided so much value that they are going to trust you. And then you can have the survival email kit. So then you can have the buy my stuff emails. So by working backwards, then we can say, okay, this can be top number 1. And then this can be 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we can work that in here. 2, 3, 4. So let's just do 4 just because the screen's so big enough. So top 4 reasons. Now I will say one thing that we've tested out is top 4 and 5 tend to work better. Anything beyond that tends to be a little bit more overwhelming unless you can fit that into other emails. So we found that actually the top 4 ways actually does really well. Top 4 or 5. So by this point, they're definitely going to want to stay to the number 1 way, right? So if you start with number 1 here and move backwards, that's fine if they're all equivalent, but if the biggest and the best way is number 1 here, leave the best for last, and that way they'll actually click through, right? So that's why I say start at this point. Now, if you wanted, you could do that as well, but if you start from this point, you begin to ask yourself, okay, what makes my product different than if you were to do it the manual way? So let's say, for example, that you were selling a piece of software, all right? Same concept. So if we were selling software, for example, a lot of times with software, you want to show the manual process, meaning the time-consuming process. In fact, if you notice, a lot of software companies nowadays are coming out with a lot of free training, free academy training type deals, because what they want to do is they want to show you how to do it for free. But then you realize, I don't want to do all this. I don't have much time in the day. I would rather buy a piece of software and speed the process up. But in order to get you to that point, they need to show you the value, right? In order to that, you need to see the value. So in that light, you could show the manual process. So let's show you a different scenario here. So let's move this down. So this is a totally different scenario here. So let's say, for example, you're selling a piece of software. So you could say, instead of saying top 4, 3, 2, 1, you could talk about the manual process. So this could be in the form of a blueprint, a secret plan, step-by-step plan, a video course. And then you talk about it every single email. Maybe you send them to a 5-minute video, which, by the way, if you do videos, make sure that your videos are short and sweet, especially if they are kind of lead magnet type videos. It's fine if it's a video course that they just purchased, like this one right here, But keep in mind that they have a short attention span. So if you do this, maybe the first thing would be, if this is a blueprint, what I would do is I would do a PDF, like a PDF blueprint. And then you say, in the next coming days or weeks, I'm going to show you step by step how to set things up. So we'll say step 1, step 2, and then step 3. So what you're doing here is you're showing that they need all of these emails in order to create a complete system. If you give everything up front at the first email, they're not going to have a reason to stay, right? So you want to make sure that you have it so that this is a complete system. So if they unsubscribe here, it's going to feel incomplete. Now, if you think closely about a movie, for example, a lot of times our brains don't like incomplete. So if you were to watch a movie and you saw even half of it, in your brain, usually you will think, I want to see the whole thing, right? If I only saw half, I want to see the whole thing. That's why our brains do not like complete. So that's what I'm showing you here. Now, in practical sense, what does that look like? Now, if you start out, welcome to, let's say, survival meal kits. So the first email will be a welcome email. Now, you want to make sure that you connect the emails. So at the end of the first email, and you talk about the top 4 reason or whatever that looks like, then you want to connect that somehow to the top number 3 in that first email. So you want to say something like, P.S. I'm going to send you an email tomorrow or the day after tomorrow or whatever on top number 3. The second email is going to be, all right, so we talked about this in the first email. Let's talk about top point number 3. And then, of course, in the PS, you're going to say, I'm going to send you an email in 2 days for top point number 4. So actually that's 4, 3, 3, 2, not 4. So that's 2. So I don't really need to go on, but the point is you need to connect them. So now that the arrows are going this way, we can actually move the arrows back. So the reason why I go backwards is because you take a little bit of content here and you move backwards. You take a little bit of content here and you move backwards. So when they sign up for this, they're naturally going to want this content, this content, this content here, and they're naturally going to want this content here. Believe it or not, this is the same strategy that we have used to get literally 50% open rates and 20% click-through rates, which is just insane. We've even seen in different niches 75% open rates, which is crazy. So as long as you understand this process and you follow along with the backward funnel and you write these emails in this way, connect to the right person and talk directly to them, you'll actually get a better conversion rate. So I hope that helped you. It's simple, but it's powerful.